From India's capital, Delhi, I'm Tulika, and this is the Press Express in depth podcast. Now, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi has taken oath of office in a glittering ceremony attended by foreign leaders from South Asia and the Indian Ocean region. Among the first leaders to accept the invite was Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, showcasing the strong and close bonds that Delhi and Dhaka continue to share. However, Modi 3.0 is a coalition government. The BJP did not win majority. Now, how's that going to impact the several areas of cooperation and plans that India and Bangladesh have in mind for the coming years? To talk more about this, I have with me Nilanjan Banik. He's the professor of economics and finance at Mahindra University, Hyderabad, India. And I also have with me Dr. Sujit Kumar Datta. He is the chairman for Department of International Relations, University of Chittagong, Bangladesh. Welcome both.
Thank you.
Nilanjan, let's first start with the bilateral trade, which has more than doubled in the last 5 years from $7 billion to $15 billion. But Bangladesh has been keen to reduce the trade deficit because the trade balance is largely skewed in favor of India. And SEPA negotiations are also going to happen soon, which is the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. I want to ask you, what is your assessment on how all of this is going to pan out, keeping in mind the new government that is taking shape in India?
So, Prime Minister Modi always thought that Bangladesh is one of a very important trading partner, not only trading partner from the politics, also it's an important partner for India from the South Asian region. Now, if you see what has happened between India and Bangladesh over the last few years, you will find that there are various complementarity in terms of trading activities. For instance, we are exporting to Bangladesh raw cotton, which get value added over there in terms of ready-made garment, which is again exported to rest of the world. India is also supplying refined petroleum product to Bangladesh. We are also supplying various other items such as cars, automobiles, electronic items, medical items, pharmaceutical products. So, in that way, the relationship between India and Bangladesh is quite organic. Now, there is a reason why the trade deficit has increased over a period of time. And
Mhm.
I think a prime reason for that has to do with the devaluation of the Bangladeshi taka. Because if you see what has happened again over the last 2 or 3 years, because of the Russia Ukraine war, because of the
Mhm.
war in the Middle East, you see that the price of crude oil has gone up. And Bangladesh is a country which is dependent, 60% of its crude has to be imported. Now, because of that, and Bangladesh is also importing a big amount of wheat and rice items. So, because of that, because of the war in Ukraine, you see that the
Mhm.
price of wheat has gone up, the price of crude has gone up, and all of that has led to an increase in trade deficit. So, in that way, I would say that India can actually help Bangladesh because one of the
Mhm.
other thing which is happening in Bangladesh, they need huge amount of investment in terms of building their infrastructure, and India can actually help them out in terms of building a road and ports, and as well as in terms of building their electricity capability, because we have companies like Adani, Larsen and Toubro, which can
Yes.
actually invest in Bangladesh in various greenfield type investment and help them out in terms of building road, ports, and infrastructure, something what the Japanese and the Chinese are doing so far. So, in that way, I think it is going to be a complementarity in the sense that both of the countries can grow and try to benefit from each other.
Yeah, well, to put things in perspective, again, when it comes to bilateral trade, it took 47 years for Bangladesh to start exporting $1 billion worth of goods. And in the last four, that has doubled to around $2 billion. So a lot of progress has also happened in the last 4 years when it comes to exports from Bangladesh to India. But Sujit, I also want to ask you, how do you respond to what Nilanjan has said? What's the kind of viewpoint that Dhaka has on this, and what are the expectations from the new Modi government?
Bangladesh in India historically are very close. In the case of geographically, in the case of historically, in the case of geographically positions, Bangladesh is very close to India. And India always supports, in the case of our historically in 1971's liberation war, so far. So our relations with the India is very much, it's a good height. So in March 2024, we have seen India exported to the Bangladesh 1.14 billion USD and imported on the case of 143 million only. So here the positive results for the India sides, and there's a huge trade deficits. So between March 2023 and March 2024, we have seen that the exports of India have decreased by the 240 after 4,023 billions, and it decreased 27% of the previous years.
Mhm.
And the trade deficits with the India was almost 7.1 billion USD in the last fiscal year. So we have seen the our Bangladesh governments are always keen to interest to do a good business with the India, and we are very much dependent on the India's from not only for the garments products but also the basic necessary like the onions. So if the
Yes,
India's
exactly.
stop the onions, then our price must be high. In the case you know that, so it's very much important for the Bangladesh Indians to take the balance in the case of trade.
Hmm. That is so true. Bangladesh, in fact, has been wanting that India stop this immediate export food bans because it immediately leads to a price hike in Bangladesh and which is already reeling under such a high inflation rate. Nilanjan, what's the way around this? Because India has its own internal reasons for placing these food bans.
So one is the food security. I think we have gone beyond that stage of food security, and we can might as well start exporting basic food items to Bangladesh. And as Professor Kumar was referring, that we are actually having a huge trade deficit. But Tulika, that is something quite normal to happen when you have a big country trading with a small country. Even India
Hmm.
has a huge trade deficit with China. The question is not about the trade deficit. The question is about at what price you are getting the goods and services. So, for instance, the example which was just now cited that for onion, the reason why you have a domestic onion price in Bangladesh lower has to do with India is able to supply onion to Bangladesh. So
Yes.
rather than talking in terms of the trade deficit, because whenever you export, the reason why you export, you are getting a higher price. Likewise, when you are importing, you are getting or you are actually importing product at a cheaper price compared to what you get in the domestic market. So in that way,
Okay.
trade is actually beneficial to both the countries. Now,
Hmm.
the main point of Bangladesh is they have to build their infrastructure, and here I think Indian government can actually play a pivotal role. As I said, we have the big corporate houses which are into building all this infrastructure. And as you know that this year, both for Bangladesh and India, we suffered quite a bit because of the hot weather climate. The
Yes.
climate change is a big issue. Now,
Hmm.
when you have the climate change kind of thing happening, I think India is now going to be taking a very active role in terms of the renewable energy sector. And there's
Okay.
something Bangladesh can get benefited from India. So, for instance, if we are talking about hydroelectric project, if we are talking about solar electric generation, Indian
Hmm.
companies have capability to handhold Bangladesh and try to help them towards manufacturing in gearing up manufacturing using the renewable energy. And that to me is going to be a big contribution for a big brother like India, helping out Bangladesh to go and do sustainable business activities.
What are the new areas that you think India and Bangladesh will find for cooperation in the next 5 years? And keeping in mind the new Modi government.
We have capability in solar power, hydroelectric power. Much has been talked about this water sharing between Tista and Torsa. So if India can build the dam and hydroelectric power project
Okay.
in Bangladesh, rather than unlike the Chinese counterpart, who is kind of damned of giving loan at a higher rate of interest, India can actually try to give on a soft basis in terms of a lower cost of interest and try to help them build this dam, which in a way is going to generate the hydroelectric electricity for Bangladesh. Mind you that the amount of water that flows in the Tista and Torsa, it actually lead to flood in Bangladesh if you are talking between the month of June up to September. Those are the
Okay.
months, those are the rainy season, and those are the season where actually this hydroelectric generation can be activated, and which can
Okay.
be helpful for Bangladesh. And I think the government should take a proactive role in terms of helping Bangladesh in terms of generating all this hydroelectric power that we are talking about.
Okay. And China and water sharing remain two big sticky issues between
Yes.
the bilateral equation between India and Bangladesh. But Sujit, how would you respond to what Nilanjan has just said?
All right, I'm totally agree with the sirs. Then energy is the most important issues for the Bangladesh-India cooperations. So we should remember on things. So although India played a
Okay.
crucial roles in our liberation war, historically Bangladesh faces two border external threats from the India, a threat to the territory and the threat from the political independence. And since its independence in 1971, actually Bangladesh has a disputes with the India over land and maritime boundaries. So we've
Hmm.
seen the river, all the disputes has already resolved. But in the case of river water sharings, NRC and CA, now all the problems have been solved peacefully by the India Bangladesh governments and accept the water sharing, NRC and CA issue.
Hmm.
So water sharing issue is the most important things, and we should know that
Okay.
Ganga water sharing treaty is signed. Actually, it was signed in 1996, and it will finish in
Yes.
after 2 years. So we should,
2026, it's going to end.
26.
The
So we
Ganga
should think
Water
about that.
Pact.
Yes, this is more important for the Bangladesh India governments, and we can sign the Tista rivers because of the West Bengals. But now we should consult the Bihar and the new governments of the India's is a alliance governments, and Nitish Kumar is the one of the most important powers of the now the Modi governments. So what will be the after 2 years for the Ganga water treaty sharings? It's the most
Okay.
important features for the Bangladesh India relations for the next years.
Can you tell us what's going to happen? Because there was this pre election sentiment in both Delhi and Dhaka that the Tista River Agreement is going to be like completely resolved now because the political dynamic in West Bengal state is going to change. But Mamta Banerjee and her TMC party is pretty
That's true.
much there. So, can we safely assume that this issue is going to just be completely halted for now? No progress there.
I think to be fair, uh, now what Bangladesh is asking is right now we have 55 to 45 percentage of sharing, meaning that India is using 55 percentage of this the water, remaining 45% is being used by Bangladesh. Now, why I say it's fair for Bangladesh to ask a division of 50-50, because if you look into the livelihood, in case of Bangladesh, you have almost 70% of their population who is dependent
Mhm.
on the Tista water, unlike
Okay.
for India, where you have 30% of the population who is dependent on for their livelihood on the Tista river water. Now, again, the nature of work also matters because Bangladesh predominantly being an agricultural and riverian economy, which is also dependent on fisheries. You see that that 70-30% livelihood by in terms of the value addition that I was mentioning. So therefore, in all fairness, I totally in support for Bangladesh when they say that the water should be divided between these two countries in a 50-50% basis. Now, one of the problem is, as you also mentioned, has to do with the Chief Minister of West Bengal, Mamta Banerjee, for some reason does not want this 50-50 agreement to go through. Now, again, instead, what she says is, why not you start sharing the Torsa water? Torsa is another river in addition to the Tista. In fact, between India and Bangladesh, we have 54 such rivers which
Yes.
we share, So therefore, why not try to look into other river water sharing from other rivers? Now, this is a political issue, but there is an Article 253 of the Indian Constitution, which suggests that if the central government or the federal government wants, they can overrule whatever the state government is asking for. Now,
Okay.
that would lead to some kind of direct confrontation between the central government and the West Bengal government. Although the West Bengal government is led by the TMC party, which is not supporting the NDA government in the central.
Absolutely.
But in spite of that, I would say that this is not a healthy thing to see the state and the center fighting over something. But from the economic point of view, I think it is quite justified, and therefore the central government should take other way, in the sense that what I was trying to say, that can we help Bangladesh to build the infrastructure, to
Mhm.
generate the hydroelectric power, and try to give loan at a much lower rate of interest what China is giving to Bangladesh, because at
Okay.
that one point of time, Bangladesh actually threatened that they are going to go to China. And I'm not sure whether that has happened. Maybe Professor Kumar can talk about that. I think
Absolutely.
China promised like $1 billion to build that hydroelectric power project in Rangpur, if I'm not mistaken. What is the current status of that agreement between China and Bangladesh? I'm not sure, but maybe Professor Kumar can talk about that.
Yes, absolutely. China has expressed interest in building projects on Tista and in other areas in Bangladesh. Sujit, what would you like to say to that?
Yes, thank you very much. So this the water sharing is most important for Bangladesh-India relations. You know that in 2011, so when the Indian Prime Minister Manmohan Singh came to the Bangladesh, the treaty almost finalized. But
Mhm.
on the page of the Mamata Banerjee, the Chief Minister of West Bengal, the treaty has not finalized so far. So I'm so thinking in the present political arena, it's not possible to conduct the Tista Treaty by the central governments of India.
Okay.
But yes, there is a good options for the Bangladesh. In China already give some proposal to develop some hydroelectric powers in the case of our Rangpur divisions and some other cases. This is the alternative process. But as a general sentiments of the Bangladesh peoples are not willing to go to the Chinese these types of projects like that, because we know that there are some restrictions, there are some limitations of the Chinese project, and what will be in the futures of the Chinese projects. You know that there are some big mega projects are going on under the Chinese finance, in this case of Bangladesh and Dhaka city and Chittagong city. So it's lots of, so there are some limitations and debate in case of Bangladesh. There are debt crises. The all know that in these issues. So Bangladesh and India is very close. So if India's governments are interested to solve these problems in this case of water sharing, which is more important for the Bangladesh economy. You know that Bangladesh is an agricultural country, and there are almost 230 small and big rivers in case of Bangladesh. So without
Mhm.
supports of the Indian governments, it's very much tough for to continue our agricultural activities in the case of Bangladesh. But if the Indian governments are performing these types of activity, then there will be no option for the Bangladesh governments. Bangladesh government may take the proposal from the China, which already Sir mentioned this in this case, because Chinese governments already proposed some proposals to develop the hydrocarbons electricity in the case of Rangpur divisions in the Bangladesh, and it's very close to the alternative of the Tista water sharings.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. In fact, that sounds like a really tricky area for India, Bangladesh to navigate. And India is really nervous about China's growing presence in Bangladesh, whether it's the military exercises or billions of dollars in financing or the Tista River projects more recently. But Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina is also going to visit Beijing next month. And just before that, India and Bangladesh are going to have their bilateral negotiations at the end of this month. So, do you think this is going to be top of the agenda among those negotiations?
I
Yes.
certainly
Please
Okay, go ahead.
continue.
No, no, I certainly think so because what Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina is trying to send a signal that look, if you don't try or help us in a more organic way, which is going to be helpful for both India and Bangladesh together. Of course,
Hmm.
you have also another big giant neighbor, China. You know, they can
Hmm.
always approach them. And but one of the, if you look into the precedents of what China has done to Pakistan and Sri Lanka, uh,
Yes.
the Bangladeshi policymaker will also be mindful of that kind of thing, and therefore India is always a better bet for them, whenever it comes to try to do some project together. So in that way, I think the first best
Yeah.
option for Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina is to try to see how much she can actually get out of the Modi government. The best thing is both Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Hasina, they go very well, in terms of their camaraderie and in terms of their relationship. So in that way,
Yes.
I'm hopeful that this thing is going to go forward.
Okay, okay, but for how long? Because this is the line that India has always taken in the last 10 years of warning Bangladesh that don't rely on China because look what China has done to Pakistan and to Sri Lanka. This has been the standard line for negotiations. Will it work going forward?
So, can I add some things in the case of Beijing visit of the upcoming? So, you know that our Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina is expected to visit Beijing in July 2024. The upcoming visit of the Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina is actually is Beijing. It will be a game changers of the South Asians politics. It
Hmm.
is stated by the Chinese ambassador in Dhaka. So there will be new chapters actually in terms of Bangladesh China relations. The signing of a free trade agreements actually was imperatives of the discussing improve to the trade and investment maximum cases. So China and Bangladesh FTA was imperative for the enhancing the bilateral economic and trade. Signing FTAs with the other countries was an involvement Bangladesh achieved the Vision 2041 is most important for the
Okay.
Bangladesh developments. So as China Bangladesh fitted agreements may be a serves a guarantee for the healthy and stable developments and bilateral economic and trade cooperations between China and Bangladesh. So this foundation of economic and trade and cooperations between China and Bangladesh is solid. So we should know that our prime ministers always said that Bangladesh-India relations is relate with our bloods. But on the other side, Bangladesh-China relations is relate with our only economy. So it's more important. So China-Bangladesh economy relation is solid and it should be extensive. Should be diverse. So in terms of trade, China has actually maintained its position in Bangladesh, a large trading partner. For the last 30 years, consecutive years, with the bilateral goods trading reaching almost 24 billion USD in the last year, 2030. So, in terms of investment of China's foreign direct investments in Bangladesh, has reached almost 3.2 billion USD in 2023. So, making China the second largest investing country in Bangladesh. So, in terms of conducting Chinese enterprise, have constructed 7 railways, 12 roads, 21 bridges, and 31 power plants in Bangladesh so far. So it's on others mega projects is going on under the Chinese finance. So it's more important things for the Bangladesh-India relations to understanding the upcoming visit of our Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina in Beijing in July.
Of course, that's very right when you talk about India and Bangladesh having shared this past, which is washed in blood. But if you go as far back as that, at that time, China was completely hostile to even the existence of Bangladesh. From there to now, forging a solid bond when it comes to economy, there seems to be a lot of positive optimism within Bangladesh to give that kind of push and welcome to China to invest more in the country, of course, for your own personal internal reasons. But Nilanjan, does that mean a lot of heartburn for Modi 3.0?
See, what China is strategically doing is, in the event of a war, if you have presence both in Pakistan and Bangladesh, that's the best scenario we can be. So I think it's more a strategic move rather than trying to help out a country just like that. And whenever trade happens, as I said, that it has nothing to do with one country only gaining. It's both the countries which are gaining. So therefore, India should also take a leaf from China in the sense that
Mhm.
we should also be mindful of this strategic move that China is trying to do by lending their friendship with the Bangladesh counterpart. So, in what way? And PM Modi, being an astute person, very well know this. So I think there will be some carrot on the table when this negotiation or the discussion happens between Prime
Yes.
Minister Modi and Prime Minister Hasina
Mhm.
in days to come, and therefore I think you will see much more in Modi 3.0, much more proactive stance being taken in terms of increased flow of goods and services to Bangladesh to counter the Chinese presence.
Hmm. India is also very conscious of China expanding its influence in the other countries around India, for example, Maldives, Pakistan, of course, and Sri Lanka, Nepal. So, kind of circling India around with a growing, influence, and probably that's one of the reasons why India invited Maldives as well for the oath-taking ceremony. A lot of geopolitical rivalry there heating up. So, India is going to put a carrot on the table, but at the same time, we might go to Maldives for more investments if China invests more in Bangladesh. Do you think that's a logical explanation?
Yeah, so Maldives, in a way, they have learned in a hard way that they cannot put all their eggs in a single basket, which in this case is China. So some point
Hmm.
of time, they also have to negotiate with India. For instance, if you look into the number of tourism
Yeah.
activities happening between these two nations, it has fallen drastically.
Yes.
In fact, I was told that most of the cine association, all the big producers operating out of Mumbai, they took a conscious decision of not filming or shooting in Maldives. So
Yes.
that has been a big rundown on their tourism sector. So
Mhm.
they realize that after a point of time, they are going to get hit quite hard. And
Mhm.
therefore, you see this coming down or softening of stance. Earlier, that hawkish stance which was taken, now we see it has been mellowed down quite a bit. India, on its part, also is smart enough to understand that. And therefore, we are also trying to see that in what way we can try to revive the relationship we have had with Maldives in the previous government. So in
Hmm.
that way, the same thing is going to happen with Bangladesh. We know Bangladesh is our close neighbor, friendly neighbor, always has been a supporter of India in terms of extremism, terrorism, or whatever sharing of data
Yes.
related to terrorism. So that thing is something India also recognize and appreciate.
Of course.
And I think because of this, you are going to see some goodies going to go to Bangladesh very soon.
Mhm. Hmm. Fair enough. Sujit, you also wanted to add to this.
Yes, we should consider the Chinese policy towards South Asia. What the ultimate target of the South Asian policy of China. So the main
Hmm.
target is to counter Indian influence in the South Asia. And they're
Okay.
making the encircled in the Indian Oceans, not only South Asian nations, but also the Indian Oceans. They're making the deep sea ports in the case of Pakistan and in the case of Sri Lanka
Okay.
and encircle India. So in a case of Bangladeshi policymakers should remember on things that India's role in the supporting of Bangladesh during the liberation war of 71 has been greatly appreciated and acknowledged, and from the foundations of strong bilateral relations and between the Bangladesh and India. So during the war of independence against the Pakistans, we should remember that India helped Bangladesh a lot in the different sectors. On the other side,
Hmm.
we should remember another things. China didn't recognize informally established bilateral relations with the Bangladesh until 1975. So, for after 75, 4 years of our birth of independence, the bilateral relations
Mhm.
of the immediate post-independence period overcome of the legacy of the Chinese rule in the liberation war, where China sided with the Pakistans and against the Bangladesh. The,
Hmm.
even though China, our stopped entry of the UN in the case of 1972. So it's more important things. So Chinese investments in not only Bangladesh, but also South Asian other countries,
Hmm.
especially Sri Lanka, Sri Lanka, Nepal's, Maldives is most importantly. So we should analyze critically what are the outcomes of the Chinese projects, what are the outcomes Chinese proposals. So as a policy makers, we should consider India's and China's. What would be the most important? So Bangladesh governments smartly balancing the policy towards the China and the India so far. So it's more important for the Bangladesh. So in the case of Bangladesh, we should consider the Chinese Belt and Road initiatives, and on the other side, in this case of Indo-Pacific strategy, is the another game challengers of the not only South Asia's but also the global scales. So Bangladesh already
Absolutely.
joined, not only Bangladesh but also the all the South Asian country already joined the BRI project except the India. So we should reconsider it. What the purpose of the BRI project? Is it only for the connectivity or the global dominance? So we should recall
Okay.
this. We should reconsider it. So it's more important for the Bangladesh policymaker to rebuild, to reconnect the Bangladesh-India relations and Bangladesh-China relations.
Absolutely. And another area where Bangladesh looks to India for support is also at international forums. You just mentioned United Nations, but India has, been kind of that encouraging partner for Bangladesh to make its voice heard on several global forums and to make it a member of those forums. But going forward in the next 5 years, where do you think are going to be the biggest areas of cooperation and challenges in India and Bangladesh bilateral equation? Starting with you,
In the
Sujit.
case of corporations, we should consider the especially the non-traditional security perspectives, especially the
Okay.
food security, especially the climate change issues, and especially the border crisis in the case of Bangladesh. So there
Yes.
are some
Yes.
challenges. We should consider that the India's image in Bangladesh is now decreasing. So,
Okay.
as academicians, we should analyze what the reasons behind this. Why the Chinese image in Bangladesh are increasing? Beside this, India's image is decreasing. So what are the reasons? So we should reconsider it, and we should reconsider it how to improve our diplomatic relations to this. So we should enhance the diplomatic engagements, people to people connections, G to G connections, trade to trade one diplomatic relations, economic and trade cooperation should be increased, and water sharing agreement, it should be solved with short times. Border management and security is an important issue for this, and regional and global corporations. In this case of, that you already mentioned that India support a lot in this case of Bangladesh in the case of global corporations. Yes, on the other side, Bangladesh supports in the case of India's governments to entering the UN security councils, the non-permanent members. So infrastructure and connectivity, the Indian seven sisters, Bangladesh location is very much important for the India, not only for the Indians development but also the security perspectives. In the seven sisters are very close to Bangladesh. It's very tough it will be very tough for Delhi to control the Assams, Mizoram from the Delhi, but very easy for the connectivity if you is the connectivity transit and
And a lot
transshipment.
has happened. A lot has been done to connect the northeastern part of India under the Modi
Exactly.
regime with Bangladesh. A lot of progress has happened there and will continue to happen. So that is one area that will definitely see a lot more development. Nilanjan, what's your take on what Sujit has said?
So I totally agree with Professor Kumar in the sense that if you see the major area of cooperation, it has to be built on security, exchange of information, fisheries, climate, and of course building road and port infrastructure. In fact, the port of India is building a deep water seaport in the port of Mongla. So in that way, it is going to cut down the shipping time also for India. So these are the things which, again, I'm repeatedly saying is going to benefit both the countries. And India has got the technological know-how as well as we also have now the capital. The amount of capital expenditure that the government is spending on the Indian economy, part of that can also flow to the Bangladesh economy. So that's something will also help to counter the Chinese presence in the Bangladesh subcontinent. So in that way, the infrastructure, climate, energy are the three, and of course the security, exchange of information related to extremism or terrorism kind of activities are the four more key areas where India and Bangladesh should work.
Hmm. And the strong point seems so far is, the kind of shared past that India and Bangladesh have had. But like Sujit said, a lot more needs to be done, especially now that Modi 3.0 is largely being seen across the border as a coalition government, and stability of that government could be questioned, or maybe just the perception of it could be questioned. But there is a comfort zone when it comes to Bangladesh and India for having had such close ties, especially the Modi Hasina legacy that has been developed in the last 10 years. Well, that brings me to the end of this discussion. As my guests feel, I'm getting this sense that Modi 3.0 and Hasina 5.0 are definitely ready to ace new frontiers that they are facing, but a lot of tricky areas that need to be navigated very carefully. However, Delhi and Dhaka have their ties forged in blood, as one of my guests feels. And going forward, it just has to be seen how this friendship is going to go in the next 5 years. With that note, I'll wrap up today's discussion. Thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you, Talika, for having us in.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And for our viewers, do feel free to stay connected with me on Facebook, X, or email. Till we meet next time, it's Namaste from Tulika.